Before I introduce my guest, I would like to give a big shout out to Magnus Comics in Maplewood, New Jersey. It's a great comic shop on the second floor right in downtown Maplewood, and that's where I was able to meet my guest in person for the very first time. So thanks, Magnus, and it's great having you in Maplewood. I have two guests joining me today. Irene Deneen is an award-winning graphic novel picture book author and acquiring editor at Blackstone Publishing, where he also runs the TV and film division. Also joining us is Irene Deneen Murray, Brendan's mom, a former teacher and social worker, and she keeps her four children guessing on a regular basis as to what adventures she will be up to next, but we will talk about that more. For fans of graphic novels and comics, including Marvel and DC Comics and more, you're in for a real treat. Brendan is the author of the award-winning novel, The Ninth Circle, as well as The Chrysalis, a 2018 horror novel that was optioned by Paramount before it was published. Also, my guest is the author of 4-volume Night Night Groot picture book series for Marvel, best-selling novels, Morbius, Blood Ties, and Guardians of the Galaxy Annihilation, Green Arrow Stranded, and the list goes on and on, Alien, Uncivil War. You told me not to list them all. I probably haven't, but coming out in September of 2025, it's the thriller Tracer, and that's just scratching the surface, as I mentioned, of what Brendan has accomplished. Hello, Irene and Brendan. It's so nice to have you on. Should have listened to my mother.
I should let my mother speak first, of course. Always.
Irene, you must know this because when I first met Brendan, he's like, come on, Mom, come on with me. And I had not really done that before, had the mom present, because not everyone's mom is still with us. So he's like, oh, she would love to come on. She'd be great. So we've been kind of sort of working on this for a while. So you have a wonderful son right out of the gate.
I know that part. Yeah.
And he's the youngest of 4 children. You guys were raised in Connecticut. I would like to, Irene was wonderful enough to write a little bio for me. So I'm going to read a little bit of this so people get an idea of your writing talents, which I have a feeling rubbed off on Brendan, but I'm not going to say that for sure. But I would like you to get an idea of who Irene is, or who she thinks she is, which is really interesting. Irene Deneen Murray grew up in the 50s, an era when women could be a nurse, teacher, or secretary. She chose teacher because it pleased her mother. In truth, the first half of her life was devoted to taking care of or pleasing her mother. At age 50, having raised 4 kids in a Hollywood-worthy suburb, Irene became a divorcee and learned to love being more adventurous than she had previously ever imagined. By then, she was working as a social worker, having recently earned a master's degree in counseling. Irene loves the natural world and has been a devoted hiker and later a biker, paddler, and pretty consistently a practitioner of yoga. She continues these pastimes presently, sometimes to the chagrin of her children, since they may picture her falling off a cliff, rolling over in her kayak, or some other catastrophe. Oh dear. Her children and grandchildren are her greatest achievement. She is a good observer and has insight galore, but it's sometimes amazed at how each of her children has developed so uniquely. It's such a pleasure. Do you like the sound of that bio, Irene?
Well, it's a capsule, a mini capsule of how I view things at this perspective.
Yeah, perspective has a lot to do with things, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I love that you're active and you're involved. And you and I chatted before Brendan joined us, how much you love writing. And it's, you know, kind of like your jam, as people say these days.
Yes, yes. I do have a project that I am working on, that I've been working on for years. I'm taking my mother's journal and transposing it the exact day, age, year, that she is and I am, and then I do my journal at the same time. So I've got two generations comparing.
That's pretty wonderful.
It is.
I'll make sure you come back and fill us in when you're all up to speed, okay?
Sure.
Good for you.
Yeah.
And just speaking of her mother, I realized relatively late in my life that my grandmother on my mother's side was a published author, which is amazing because she also raised 6 kids by herself. So not only was she raising 6 kids as a single mother, also had time to get published as a writer. And I have some of those publications right here in my desk right next to me, and it's just incredible to realize she was able to do that while also dealing with such a difficult set of circumstances when her husband died quite young.
Wow. That opens up a whole can of worms. Okay, so how about if we stay with your mom? What was your mom's name, Irene?
Wilma.
Wilma. Okay, and describe a little bit about your relationship with Wilma.
Well, as in mother-daughter or in mother-son relationships, they're never just one clear-cut thing. It was complicated. She was my heroine. And at the same time, I took on responsibility for her life, especially from the time that my dad died. So I think that's where the social worker got really
The seeds was planted.
Were planted, yeah.
What number of the 6 kids are you?
I'm number 2. I was surrounded by brothers, and so the youngest is a sister, but there were 4 brothers and the 2 girls. And so I stepped into the void because my brothers were all acting out, shooting windows out of schools and getting in car crashes. So somebody had to be good.
So you're kind of like that surrogate mom.
Yeah. I mommed my mom.
Yeah. So were you bound to do everything, the antithesis of what your mom, is that what you were in search of, running away from all of that when it came to raising your 4 children?
Jackie, I'm not sure about that, to be honest. I was looking for love. That's all I wanted was, the quest of the young woman to find love. That was it. And so I just thought if I just had these children, my husband would love me, and then you have to raise them.
Yeah.
Brandon, then you got to do something with them.
Did a damn good job.
So what's the ratio boy-girl of the 4 kids? What's the ratio?
3 boys and 1 girl.
Oh boy. So,
yeah.
Oh boy, no pun intended.
Yes.
And did they love you? Did your children?
Did they love me? Well, children are little egomaniacs. Come on, let's be realistic. Children are the font of all me. They're cute, and so you can show them off, and dress them up. But do they love you? Yeah, you're an attachment. You're an attachment thing. They come, they go.
Right, but you can't rely on others to make you happy, was what you found out.
Right.
That's a huge lesson, because I think people are still doing that today. If they're lonely, they're settling, or they're making a decision for the wrong reasons, out of loneliness versus
vacuum. Yeah.
What actually fulfills them, or waiting until they have become the person that they trust and love themselves. That's hard.
That's a journey.
That's a journey. I'm still on it. I'm still on it. All right. So Brendan, now I want to hear a little bit about your perspective of your mom and what tales you can tell of what kind of mom she was, and some favorite.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could come on here and say, horror stories of abuse and but I honestly had a pretty charmed childhood. Part of that was like she said, a Hollywood worthy suburb. It really was, in my era in the 1980s, like something out of a Spielberg movie, where all the kids are riding their bikes around. We lived right in the center of town. We would leave on a weekend in the morning and then literally not come home until, we'd hear the
The bell
call,
rang for dinner.
dinner. I mean, literally, you hear the call. So look, was it perfect? Nothing's perfect. Is nostalgia a bit of a gloss? Of course it is.
Mhm.
And especially as I hit puberty and got a little more angsty, um, it was a little tougher. Frankly, a lot of the friction was between me and my father. That sort of prototypical father-son friction, and maybe that's more typical also of moms and daughters. Once in a while when my mom would get mad at me, she would chase me around the table with a wooden spoon. But I think I was a little too quick for her at that point. But my memories are of her reading to me. Her nickname for me was Lowly Worm out of the Richard Scarry books. And, um, I get emotional talking about it. I had a lot of support from my creativity and really no complaints in terms of the baseline of my childhood.
So when you think of being home, was it a happy place, a place where it was cautious when you had to prepare yourself to walk in there because of the friction, or was it welcoming?
I mean, look, from 0 to 15, there was no real friction. It was really around 15, 13 to 15 where like I'm raising kids. Every adolescent, you start to not want to be there. You don't appreciate, and what she's talking about is true. You don't love your parents the way you do maybe when you're little or when you're 50, or 52. I think there's an era, puberty to 20s, where you don't remember or recognize all the things they have done, that they do, that they will do for you. So I'd say there was probably a 5-year period, 3 to 5 year period where I had to prepare myself to walk in the door. It's like, uh-oh, did the report card come home today?
What do you have to say to that era, Irene, that period?
By the time I got to Brendan, I used to call him Brendan Quits Deneen. I was frankly getting a little tired of being
Babysitting.
being an active mother. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I did not always know or care about the minutia, the way I would have with the earlier kids. So if he felt somewhat neglected, maybe it was to his advantage because it was a time when he might have wanted to go under the radar. I do remember a messy room. I do remember comic books in the closet, boxes of them. I remember the paper, the white paper with the little square. Then the little square next to it was not exactly, it wasn't like an engineer made it. It was like squiggly. And then it had little characters and they were saying things. So there was a lot of creativity going on. I think you had a room to yourself too, didn't you, Brendan?
At that point, yeah.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, which was pretty messy. I just closed the door.
Oh,
Yeah,
was
I mean,
that
look,
what you're
the
supposed to do?
support,
Huh?
the support was there. Look, every play I was in,
Oh,
they were
yeah.
they were both there. Every
Yeah.
time my dad would bring home blank paper from work so I could draw my own comic books. Um, they'd read my stuff. We'd talk about it. We always sat at the dinner table and had conversations.
Yeah.
There was just a ton of support about all creativity, all sports, any sports game, they were there. But particularly for me, my writing, the support never wavered, and that was not everybody has that, so that was important.
Yeah. It kind of, when you're the elder of the siblings, it's harder because parents are often adjusting, and I'm the youngest of seven, so I had a
Wow.
I had a great well, it's kind of like the older four than the younger three. So by the younger three, things were pretty different. But I learned a lot from my older siblings. Did you learn much from watching your older siblings, Brendan?
I mean, absolutely. I modeled so much of myself on them. My oldest brother is the guy who had the comic books and played Dungeons and Dragons. And those are things that I really connected with. So I got that, for lack of a better term, the nerdy stuff from him. And then my next brother was, A-list jock, basketball star. And I wanted to be like that. So I would do sports. And then my sister and I, 2.5 years apart, were in school together a lot, high school. And so she and I bonded over our parents, or if I liked a girl, asking advice like, what should I do? And
Oh,
so
that's
yeah,
great.
yeah, I got tons of, even, look, my oldest brother is 8 years older than me. My next one is 7 years older. So I was never like friends with them the way I was friends with my sister. So they were almost like not uncles, but they were icons. They were like, it was the comic book brother, the D&D brother, and then there was the jock, Mr. Smooth, super handsome, tall, and like there were two models that I was like, I want to be both. Like if you smush these two dudes together, that's who I want to be.
Good. And did that happen?
I feel like I'm kind of in the middle.
Yes.
That's pretty cool. That's really,
Yeah.
really great. Oh my gosh. Irene, do you see your children differently as Brendan just described them?
Um, that is right, pretty much accurate. In fact, that's very accurate. I think the thing I did not realize until we've had these couple of conversations is how Brendan, and a few other things that have happened recently, is that Brendan considered his sister such a friend. I think I was more self-absorbed at that point, and I did not really realize that you saw her in that role and that was playing out between the two of you. So that makes me very happy, actually. She was valuable to you that way. That's really gratifying, actually.
So you did something right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. 4 children and working. So there was obviously issues going on. You wound up getting divorced.
Mm-hmm.
Do you look back wishing that you could have done things very differently, or you're happy with the bigger picture?
That question is a little bit difficult because time has changed the edges, but I will say there's no way I could have wanted it to be different, because I could have a fantasy of it but we were moving in such different directions. It was almost inevitable. Mm-hmm. It would have been worse to have stayed together.
Often that is the case. Well, and then parents stay together for the betterment of the children. And
right.
My husband went through that, and he's like, seriously, you waited for me to get out of high school? Yeah. We've known for years that you two were destined to be apart. So you could have helped us by leaving, separating mm-hmm. earlier and getting rid of that friction in the home. You said earlier, Irene, that you were kind of done with the child rearing, by the time Brendan was around. What were you, poor baby, is it, where was your heart and your mind? Were you thinking at that point, is that when you went to start working? You were still in the marriage, or?
Oh yeah, I was in the marriage, and I went back to graduate school. And when I went to graduate school, I finally found my tribe. I found people who spoke my language. I was vibrating because it was, I'm highly emotionally intelligent. And I finally found there was nothing wrong with me. I had thought my whole life there was something really wrong with me, because everybody else was intellectual. It was like, I'm not there. I want to speak from my heart. So it was like such a gift.
Is that for the social work, your master's?
It was counseling, but I ended up doing social work because that's really what I was supposed to be doing, because I'm good at that. I tried counseling, but it didn't match me. I need to move. I don't know. I need to move. I can't be sitting around.
But it's a learning experience, right? That you open those floodgates.
Oh,
you felt alive.
Oh yeah. It was like life-changing, absolutely life-changing.
Did you notice a change in your mom, Brendan?
I was way, I mean, she's talking about self-absorbed. I was way too self-absorbed to really,
There's a lot of
you know,
self-absorption. We were sponges.
Oh
I
my
just
gosh.
remember I would come home from school. I was the latchkey kid. I'd come home, no one was there. I'd microwave a couple hot dogs. You know, we didn't have cable. We were the only
No
people, only
drill.
family in America that didn't have cable. So I would watch, you know, the Monkees and reruns like every kid in the 80s did. I don't know. And eat the hot dogs. And I didn't really, I had my comic books and my hot dogs and my you know, the reruns of 70s sitcoms. And I was like, oh, this is great.
Wow. No cable. My mom, she hated television as well, Linda, and she would call it the idiot box, but we would always be sneaking Dark Shadows or something. It might have been before your time. But
Nice.
and then we'd see the car coming in the driveway and we'd turn everything off and, you know, pretend we were doing our homework. But yeah, she and there's brilliance in that theory as well, right? We see it with everyone on their phones these days. But what is your relationship like now with the two of you? What kind of interaction do you have?
Okay, I'm going to talk first, Brendan. Brendan is one of two of my psychic connections. So I can talk to him about heavy stuff. I can talk to him about day-to-day stuff. I can talk to him about family gossip. I can talk to him, you know, about, you know, not about if I'm having sex with somebody or something. I don't usually bother him with that stuff, kind of stuff. But short of
Good
that,
for you.
Oh my God.
I, oh, TMI, mother, TMI.
All right. All right.
But that's great. When you figure that out after divorce, when he was out of school and all that, or just recently, or for years now?
I think it's the last 20 years, probably.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. In my second marriage, when I was starting to have a hard time in that, I would drive to the store, call him up and say, I'm in my office. I need to talk. Because I had to get out of the house to talk. And at that point, I started to really rely on him just as a listening post.
Wait, this was your second marriage or your first marriage?
Second, after
Second.
I was
Okay.
married the second time. Yeah.
So that's pretty amazing. It's a lot for you to take in, Brendan.
I mean, yeah, she's, I mean, look, I don't want to paint it too broadly, but she's a great human. And almost anyone who meets her is like this, wow, she's so amazing. And look, nobody's perfect, but she is pretty great. And so like as soon as I grew up a little bit, you know, when you get out of your 20s, you know, even before you necessarily have your own kids, but especially when you have your own kids, which I do have too, it's like you start to realize what your own parents did, what they sacrificed as you start sacrificing things. And I think she is very emotionally intelligent. I think I am as well. So we're able to talk with each other and listen, which a lot of people do not do. We've actually talked recently about how few people listen. A lot of people talk and less listen. So yeah, we talk pretty often. We can talk about generally anything with a couple
One
exceptions as noted.
exception.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've already noted those the exception.
Yes.
But otherwise, um, you know, literally almost anything. And it's not the kind of thing where either of us is monologuing. It really like and it can be something as simple as, oh my God, the weather, or is there life after death, like and everything in between. You know, it never gets too heavy, never gets too light, and it's always funny. It's just she's a great person, and she's a great person in our relationship. Well, again, nothing is ever perfect. It's pretty remarkable and special.
So if I were to ask you in reference to your mom, this is a story of the woman who,
She is a complicated, adventurous, thoughtful, perhaps sometimes too thoughtful, caring, uh, irreverent at times, empathetic, um,
That's enough.
human being. Huh?
That's enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
she's still telling you what to do.
Pushy.
You should have listened to your mother,
I know. I should have listened to my mother. You're right. You're right. I'm listening.
Oh my gosh, that's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. And we talk about, as kids or young teens, we have that mother figure, female role model on a pedestal sometimes, and we don't know them. We have no idea what they're really experiencing as a human. And I look back, it was pretty crazy in our house. It was amazing, phenomenal relationship with all of my siblings today. Both parents are gone, but wow, there was a lot going on. And I wish in hindsight, it would be really cool to go back and reenact all of that and lend a hand a little bit more often, but we were pretty good kids. At least they used to tell us that.
Right. Not too bad.
Yeah, not too bad. All right. So Brendan, now I know you have a new book coming out in September of 2025, Tracer. You've done some phenomenal work, and it's no doubt in out of respect for your mom and her writing skills and her creativity, I'm sure. But tell us about Tracer and what other big projects, small projects you have on the line.
Oh, right on. Yeah, I mean, there's no question that there is a vein of creativity that runs from my grandmother to my mom to me, and maybe even past, further back that I'm not even aware of, and that's probably inevitable. Yeah, Tracer is my 6th published novel, my 16th published book, since I write in different mediums. It's my 3rd original novel. I write a lot of tie-in material, and my first original novel in 7 years. So it's a big one for me. And it's science fiction set in the future where oil has run out. There's been a disease that has wiped out a lot of the humanity, and humanity has figured out how to turn plastic back into oil. And so plastic is the new gold. And so the major cities are now built on top of landfills where they're constantly digging for plastic that we threw out throughout history, because that's where the money is, basically. So it's in this arena that we follow the story of Tracer. That's the protagonist's name. She is a mercenary who gets sent from one landfill city to another landfill city on this mission. And it's very violent. There's a love story at the heart of it. There's a mother-daughter relationship that's very, very complicated. And it's, I'm hoping for the best, and it's a tough era to work in publishing, to be a writer where, the arts and libraries are under fire. So I feel lucky to be published, and hopefully people will dig this one.
Yeah, because of this era doesn't mean that we stop being creative and producing and expressing ourselves.
All the more reason to do so.
Yeah, exactly. So social media wise, you recently sent me your Blue Sky, but do you want the others mentioned as well, or?
I'm struggling with that as well. I'm on Twitter.
It's hard.
I refuse to call it X, but I'm on Twitter. I'm on
Instagram.
But
so people can find you.
They can find me. I just want to put it on the record that I struggle with these.
I do as well, and I've left and come back, and then I said, why did I do that? So. But it doesn't mean that all the messages that have the right sentiment can't be expressed and shared. That's what we need more of, right? That's my intention. I have to keep thinking that way.
I agree.
Okay. Irene and Brendan, this has been really wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so glad. And Irene, thank you for writing your beautiful little bio. And keep doing your work.
Yep.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
And we'll be back next week with another episode of Should Have Listened to My Mother.